Yo, welcome back to the MMA Short Show. As always, your boy, Steven Moustaris. And guys, this topic for this video today, comes from my guy, Lord Kratos. Shouts out to you, man. I always appreciate you commenting and, leaving your thoughts and everything on my videos. I really appreciate it for real. But, I'd like the comment showing, he asked me to talk about the antitrust lawsuit that's going on with the whole UFC right now and, previous fighters and managers and whatnot. And basically, not to get too crazy into it, because I'm sure you guys are pretty aware, but if not, recently in I think it was like 2014, there was a big, antitrust lawsuit put against the UFC, basically, calling them, monopolizers and everything of the, of the market, trying to keep fighter pay low. So like, when we get these guys, especially I think like the two main guys that are really, highlighted for these like big fighters is Cung and John Fitch, who, are basically saying like, hey, not only are we getting paid, too little and everything and, kind of getting abused by the UFC, getting forced to fight, also every time that we become free agents and we can go see where the money is, the UFC's buying up all these companies and then we're forced to sign back with them for, very cheap. And it's, to be fair here, this happens all the time in business, but it, it just hits a little bit different when, you're a big, sports fan, MMA fan, whatever. And, you start to get attached to these fighters and you really know they're the product. They're the ones making this money. So, basically, so now it's a big thing where this judge previously has just, gave it a class action, certification. So now this makes it a bigger thing. And now I think up to 1,200 fighters can, sue the UFC, which is absolute massive. And it's from I think it's like December of 2010 to I think June or something of 2017. Which is pretty massive. And if you guys look back, there was tons of promotions going around like Dream, I think at Gegard Mousasi and Shinya Aoki, I think there's Strikeforce, which was a big one, King of the Cage, WEC, there's a lot of brands out there, and especially Strikeforce was getting pretty big there. And I mean, you guys already know, if you're a big UFC fan, the amount of talent that they got from the WEC cage, and Strikeforce is, oh my gosh, it's like I don't know how many champions it produced. I should have looked that up because it's a bunch. But I mean, goodness, we had so many people come in and just take over the UFC. And if it wasn't for that, the UFC wouldn't have, those 145, 135 divisions that are so stacked. But, it's awesome to see here. It's one of the coolest things we can see. I think a lot of us already have known for a while now, if the UFC, especially the fighters, if they're ever going to get paid what they deserve to get paid, if they're ever going to get the 50-50 split of the revenue that they make, like we see in the NBA and the NFL and everything, like these guys need to come together and make a fighters union and everything. But, it's a tough thing with this sport. It's such a big combat sport. It's such a one-on-one sport. You're not going to have these guys sit here and become cordial and be nice. Like, you're not going to get Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington or whatever to, squash beefs. You're not going to get these guys who have hatred. You're not going to get these guys that are aiming for titles. Like, they're not going to come together for the bigger picture, as of late. And, this is huge. This can be big. But, the one thing that scares me here is, I think the plaintiffs and everything are seeking like up to 800 million to 1.4 billion in pay and everything back. And, due to, contracts that got fucked up or, money that they had to throw away because the UFC bought out these companies, which is very dirty and very illegal. But the thing that sucks with this whole thing is the UFC has already gotten so big at this rate. Even if they do lose this lawsuit, it's going to be huge for our older fighters like Cung Le, John Fitch, go on forever and ever. And, like Mark Hunt, like the whole, if you guys don't know the Mark Hunt situation, that's one of the craziest ones ever. And I could do a video on that, but Mark Hunt back at UFC was a 100 or whatever, 200, whatever, whichever one it was. I think it was 200 actually, where Brock Lesnar comes back and, fights Mark Hunt on like last day's notice. But the UFC, it's pretty well documented out there that they knew that Brock Lesnar wasn't going to be able to pass the USADA test, and he failed. I don't know how many of them. I think he failed the pre-test, the night of the fight test, and I think the post-fight test. And the UFC was knowing, very knowing of this. And they still let, Mark Hunt go out there and he end up getting beat, loses out his title hopes, all these things. And he tries to sue the UFC. And the UFC has such good, I'm not a law, major or anything, so I'm not even going to sit here and act like I know everything. But, they have such good, lawyers and everything that I think Mark Hunt ended up having to pay like $400,000 out of his own pocket for even trying to sue the UFC, which he had all the, he had it all. He already had all the evidence, everything, everybody backing him, all these things, and he still lost. And it's, even if the UFC loses this and they have to pay out 800 million or 1.4 billion, sadly they already have it, and sadly this should be something that's already been going on. It's fucked up, this whole pay thing. I talk about it all the time. But it is cool that we can finally start seeing these fighters come together a little bit, team up a little bit, and hopefully it can be a huge thing. But again, like I said, it's already almost a little too late for, if we're going to see Dana White take some hits. The Fertittas, who were owners then, they're already out of it. They already sold. They already have all the money in the world. So, it's going to be tough if you're trying to see them get in trouble or the UFC take a hit or anything. I don't think it's going to happen. They're almost untouchable at this rate. They're already too big. Even if people try to boycott them again, the UFC has been proving time after time. They can drop a guy like Francis Ngannou. They can go without Conor McGregor fighting in his prime. They let John Jones go for a little bit there, not out of the company, but they let him not fight for however long. There's not going to be one fighter that they need. So it's the sad part. But it is really cool that we can start seeing this come together. It's cool to start seeing the legal problems and legal actions start coming together and allowing these things to be bigger, class action lawsuits, which is massive. And I am super excited. But yeah, don't be expecting it to be changing anything crazy. Fighter pay should already be a thing. But until we get these guys going together and, coming in with a fighters union and all these things, the pay is not going to be much different. It's still going to be these guys, making weight, and their guys missing weight. These guys aren't getting paid. It's still going to be, you're coming in to fight your first fight, 5,000, 10,000 for show, 10,000 to win, 30,000 to win, 30,000 for show. It's always going to be an issue, but it is cool that hopefully this is a big win for guys like John Fitch and Cung and all these managers and all these other fighters throughout those period of time that, could have maybe signed a bigger deal, but the UFC is so, I don't want to sit here and call them, corrupt or anything, because guess what? If we are looking at the fast food, chain of restaurants and everything, that the corrupt stuff that they did, for McDonald's to be popular, for Taco Bell to be popular, for what Walmart's done, buying out a bunch of stores and everything, family-owned things, all these things, we could sit here and cry wolf about it all, but you can't blame the UFC for trying to become a huge thing as a company. You can't blame them, but as someone who's pro fighter over here and somebody that loves our fighters and everything, we can blame them. But again, like I said, I just don't expect it to be anything crazy. And this still is going to be a crazy, drawn out lawsuit. There's still going to be a lot of fight back from the UFC. So who knows? But this is huge. And, it just goes to open your eyes. This shit's still going on. This whole Bellator, it sounds like one's about to buy Bellator, or PFL might buy Bellator. And then the UFC all of a sudden, I don't know if you guys have been seeing, but on their website, they're showing how they got Patricky Pitbull and all these other guys on there that are fighting. I think they just added MVP or something on their website, on the UFC's website. So it seems like something's going on here. Every time the UFC, starts to have some sort of competition, money rules it all, and they buy them out. So, again, Lord Kratos, I appreciate the hell out of you for, asking me to do this video, and hopefully you guys learned some today or whatever. But let me know what you guys think, if this is going to be something huge for you guys, if you guys think John Fitch, Cung Le, all these guys, all these fighters that are probably going to go in. Like I said, it's almost 1,200 fighters, so we're going to have a lot of big names probably coming out here soon. So I can't wait to see what's going on. But, it just goes to show, man, what was going on beforehand. I remember, somebody commented on one of my videos last time, really reminding me, if this was prime UFC right now in 2000s, what Dana White, openly going up against Tito Ortiz and trying to, literally sabotage that man's career is one of the most illegal things that it ever felt like. So you can't be shocked at what the UFC did for so long. And if you go back and look at what Pride did, they are very corrupt too, from what we've heard, and the Japanese mafia and mob and all that thing. So, at the end of the day, there's always going to be some sort of, stingy thing going on. But if you're trying to have a successful, company, it's going to get probably pretty ugly, and you're going to be cutting taxes, and, you're going to be getting out all these things. So as always, your boy, Steven Moustaris. Let's go, baby. This is a win for the fighters. Let's go.